Today we're talking side quests, specifically side quests that you can do pretty early on in the game. You could do this as early as chapter 3, and we're talking Chadley, quirky, weird Chadley. The battle intel report that is in question is number 3 here. Specifically the verbiage, I've gone online to different boards and forums, specifically in GameFAQs. There's a lot of confusion in how to actually finish this battle intel in order to get the reward, which, by the way, the reward is extremely good. The sooner you can get it, the better. For completing the Stagger Effect Part 1, you'll receive the First Strike Materia. It essentially gives an ATB boost at the very beginning of the battle. The amount of ATB that you'll receive at the beginning of the battle will be based off of how much you've actually leveled up the First Strike Materia. At the first level, it gives a pretty significant, it almost fills up to 1 ATB gauge. And after you've actually gotten it to level 2, you'll have 1 full ATB gauge at the very beginning of the battle, which is extremely useful. So that's the main benefit of actually going ahead and finishing up the Stagger Effect Part 1. So let's look into the verbiage of it, because that's the most confusing part. So here the condition states we need to use a unique ability or use unique abilities on staggered enemies and charge the ATB gauge 10 times. Now, when I first read that, what I thought was, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and stagger the enemy, then I'm going to use Braver, or I'll use Unbridled Strength, or something along Barrett's lines. I'm going to use one of the abilities that you learn or that you actually have as one of your characters. And if you do that, you'll find that the number of times that you're going to need to do this, which is 10 times, will not be going up. So first and foremost, it's important to understand that unique abilities are not attacks or abilities like Braver. Instead, unique abilities are your triangle attacks. For Tifa, it's called the Whirling Uppercut, and that actually changes if you use Unbridled Strength, but we're not going into that. I think that's called Omni Strike. But the point of the matter is, you want to use a unique ability after the enemy is staggered to build one of your ATB gauges. So I think that last part might be kind of confusing, but here's the general gist of it. There's just 2 parts of it. You stagger an enemy, and you use the unique ability. And when you use the unique ability, if it charges an ATB gauge, then you've done it. Now, this probably begs the question though, what about for Cloud, right? And so he has the operator mode, but when you press triangle, he goes to Punisher mode. And what I've figured out is that when you stagger an enemy, if you are in Punisher mode and you slash at an enemy, and you happen to build an ATB gauge, that will go ahead and add to the criteria of the Stagger Effect Part 1. And the best part about it is that with these battle reports, you can actually do some of these criterias before you even have access to the battle report. So, for instance, here I am against the Sweeper. I'm going ahead and staggering him, and then I switch over to Barrett. I use Overpower. That charges his ATB. And there you go. You've already gone ahead and added 1 criteria to actually getting this done. 1 of 10 at the very least. And one of the biggest complications to getting this done early is that most of the enemies, the weird rats that are around, they're not going to have enough HP to actually be staggered at all. You'll end up just killing them outright. And so my biggest suggestion would be to make use of the quests that are given to you at the very beginning of the game. You'll fight monsters that are much stronger that you can actually go ahead and stagger. For example, the Doom Rats, there's 3 of them. So you get the ability to do this multiple times. You also have the Lesser Drakes that you can do this to. You have the Cerulean Drake quest as well. So there are a few quests, a good number of monsters that you can actually do this with. The fastest way, in my opinion, is going ahead and staggering an enemy, switching over to Cloud, going into Punisher mode, and slashing away and building 2 bars if you can. And one thing to note, one very, very big thing to understand is that if you already have a full ATB gauge, for instance, you stagger with Tifa and you switch over to Cloud, who already has a filled ATB gauge bar, like the whole thing is filled, and you start slashing away in Punisher mode, because there's no ATB to build, this will not work. You simply just need to do exactly as the condition states. You need to actually build an ATB gauge with the triangle attack button that you're going to use. Simply put, if your triangle attack does not build an ATB gauge, then this just isn't going to add to actually completing the stagger effect part 1. And there it is. That's how to actually complete the battle intel report number 3, also known as the stagger effect part 1. The verbiage that they're using is just a lot more confusing than it needs to be, but you get a nice reward out of it, so I definitely would suggest doing this as fast as possible. If this video helped at all, cleared up some confusion, by all means, please leave a like or give me a comment. Tell me what you thought, what it meant to use a unique ability after staggering. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I totally thought I'm just going to stagger an enemy, use Braver, and I'll be done with it. That was not the case.